This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
So how long has it been since we've gotten the taste of a Victory Monday this early in the season?
Not just a Victory Monday, but like a victory where I actually came out of it feeling good about how Lions played. It's not just, we kind of backed into that win. I actually feel good about what we did on the field.
I actually do too, and the Victory Monday for me has, the feelings of the Victory Monday have extended from Victory Monday to also Victory Tuesday, and I have a good feeling I'll still feel pretty good about it on Victory Wednesday. But this is the Fan Report, where it's by fans.
For fans.
You can follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. You can find our show pretty much at iTunes primarily, I believe. We're brought to you by Detroit Sports Podcast as well. You can follow them on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. This is episode number 174. And we're going to be talking about, obviously, the Lions' convincing win over the Washington Commanders. I didn't mess it up this time. And we're going to look ahead to the game upcoming against the Vikings this weekend, their first road game of the year. And we got a couple Pistons questions to pose as well. So we're going to touch on that at the end here. But let's kick it off here with some Lions talk. Andrew, going into halftime, how shocked were you that this team was up 22-0? Not just based off of how the game was going, because based off how the game was going, they honestly probably should have been ahead 28-35 to nothing.
It wasn't the score at all for me. It was just the complete dominance of an entire half of football. That may have been the best half of football I've seen the Lions play.
Just all around, they dominated in every facet of the game. They dominated special teams. They had a huge return. Mm-hmm. They dominated the running game. They dominated the passing game. They dominated defensively. Mm-hmm. Every facet of the game, the Lions were firing on all cylinders for the first half of a football game, which, when's the last time that's happened? I mean, how many times last year did we see the Lions in the first half damn near blow the game out of the, just blow out the game, and essentially most teams could have just given up, only to fight back in the second half. Yeah. Versus this past week, it was quite literally clinical.
Where was this in the beginning of the
game?
It
was quite literally clinical. How they just marched up and down the field, just absolutely stunted the forward momentum of anything related to Washington's offense. They were dominant, and Aiden Hutchinson wasted zero time getting his first sack. Mm-hmm. Zero time. It was so quick that I honestly hadn't even had the chance to turn the game on yet. And I didn't miss much time. I get the notification on my phone, Aiden Hutchinson gets his first sack. I'm like, I got to get to the game. And I'm like, dude, it's 3 minutes in.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to miss it because I heard my dad screaming from across. It's watching Lions games. My dad is fun.
It's a treat. I've done it. It's a treat.
He goes crazy.
One of my favorite.
He doesn't go crazy for anything else. It's just the Lions.
One of my favorite games that we watched with your dad was the London game from a few years back. I want to say they were playing the Falcons or somebody over there.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
And I went to your house. It was 9 a.m, and weren't we having breakfast together or something too?
Probably. It was an early game.
Watching the game, that's part of the reason I kind of enjoy the London games, because it's just it's a little wrinkle. It's fresh. It's new. You get to eat, drink something different while watching the Lions play.
Unless you're on the West Coast.
Unless you're on the West Coast. Yeah.
Nobody waking me up at 6 a.m. to watch football. Sorry. Right. I'm still sleeping.
Obviously, we're going to break into some of the numbers and some of the things we noticed from this game, but you got to imagine that these guys are on an absolute high. And going into this game, we were, in all honesty, rightfully worried, especially with the injury announcements that came out late. I mean, we talked about it on the show. We gave our picks. We did both take the Lions, but I believe we gave it with the caveat that if the Lions have at least most of their complement of players, that this is our pick. They didn't have that complement of most of their players, and they still dominated.
I'll be straight up with you. Going into kickoff, I was starting to think the Lions were going to lose this football game.
I was a little bit worried myself.
You lose that much of the interior line, you lose your starting corner. It was looking dicey. I mean, you're talking about this with the interior line. You're talking about the strength of, and DeAndre playing hurt. You're talking about the strength of this team being gutted.
Absolutely.
So I was pretty nervous about the reason I was pretty nervous about us being depleted in the secondary is because of the first game that Jahan Dotson had, and I was like, if we don't have someone
still had a pretty good game
to cover Dotson, we're screwed.
Well, I was when I heard Aruarie was down, I immediately got extremely worried because that Washington Commanders receiving core is one of the top receiving cores in the entire league.
Yeah.
Like their 1, 2, 3 across the board is you can match that up with anybody out there almost. I mean, to have Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, like that's a formidable trio right there.
Yeah.
And then don't even forget Logan Thomas too. Like he's a really good tight end in this league.
He's
probably
no
one
slouch
of the
at
10
tight end.
best. So I was definitely worried about the way that how the Lions were going to be able to keep these guys under wraps. And obviously for an entire half of football, they did. And it entirely was based around the fact that they were able to get to the quarterback. Aiden Hutchinson, 3 sacks, just a dominating game from him. He didn't waste any time getting that first sack or the second or the third, like you mentioned. And he was in the face of Carson Wentz the entire game, especially early on before he started getting hurt. One thing I noticed too was he played hurt for a lot of that game, and dude was still getting involved and making himself a force and a presence. And I gotta give respect to the heart and respect to the competitive nature of Aiden Hutchinson. To it's week 2, and you're dealing.
Did we ever
with
find out the nature of the injury?
I have not heard, no. But you're dealing with a leg injury that is clearly hampering you. You're limping all up and down the field on the sidelines. You go and get your leg wrapped. You go to the locker room. You come back. And you're still fighting, play in and play out to make things happen and try to make plays. And obviously he was rotated in and out a lot more in the second half. A lot more of it was personnel related. But to see him continue to fight the way he was through the injury kind of shows that's the type of stuff that's going to gain your respect in this league, and especially with your teammates. So big props to Aiden Hutchinson there. But as a unit, the pass rush was excellent. I mean, you had the sack fumble in the end zone that led to the safety. You had, which in that 4th down call, I had zero problem with it. I was actually saying, go for it. Go. Like, it's early in the game. You pin them down deep. Field goal, who cares at that point? And make it, 3-0? Or 6-0, whatever it was. It didn't really, go for it at that point. I'm totally fine with early aggressiveness like that. They did. They didn't get it. But then they came right around and forced a safety, make it 5-0. And that right there kind of set the tone for the whole game. The Lions were going to get after it and be aggressive, especially defensively with the pass rush. And I firmly believe that was a huge reason they got out to the lead they had, because Carson Wentz was extremely uncomfortable in the first half, and you really saw how uncomfortable he was by the adjustments that Washington made, that Ron Rivera and the Commanders made in the locker room at halftime to give Carson Wentz more time. And that allowed them to open things up a little bit. But you saw how many problems that pass rush gave Wentz and that offense based on the adjustments that they made going into the second half. And I got to give big props to the pass rush, which, they invested a lot into in the offseason. So it's good to see that start humming a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Real quick, we do have an injury update on Aiden Hutchinson. According to Coach Dan Campbell, he said in his Monday morning press conference, Hutch should be okay. He just had a little Charlie horse. He'll be tender, but he should be fine.
Why do I feel like Dan Campbell calls anything related to like a hammy or quad injury a Charlie horse? Like that just seems like something he would. You tear a hammy. Nah, it's a Charlie horse. You're fine. He's fine.
You look at all like his comments on the other injuries, like Ragnow. Frank feels a little better today. We'll see where he's at. Jonah Jackson, Martin Harway feels better today. We'll see where that's at. Charles Harris, we'll see. He feels okay today. It's starting to feel like he was holding those guys out on purpose again.
It's a day by day thing with him. Like he just goes, everybody gets better by the day. Improvement is what he likes to preach. So everybody improves on a daily basis, and that goes from play on the field to injury. So that's his mindset. But what were your thoughts from that first half, especially? And we'll get into the second half in a little bit here. But what were your thoughts from that first half?
I mean, I was expecting the offense. I was expecting the offense to come out swinging, and honestly, like you said, we could have put up more points. To be honest, like there were three field goals a couple times
on the field there. Yeah.
What impressed me most, what surprised me most, was like you said, the defensive performance in the first half, especially Aiden Hutchinson. Makes me really excited for his to watch him this season and his career going forward. Knock on wood. But Jeff Okudah played a fantastic half. Terry McLaurin didn't really do much damage until the second half when Jeff Okudah was out.
It does help to have a formidable pass rush as a defensive back.
Exactly.
Makes your job a hell of a lot easier.
But that's my big thing from that first half, and what makes me most excited is that defensive performance against not the greatest team in the world in the Commanders, but an offense that's still an offense you have to take seriously.
It is, and
they were coming in 1-0.
I also believe it's an offense that is much improved from last year in terms of the Commanders. I mean, they added weapons on that team, and you can argue an upgrade at the quarterback position as well, going to Wentz. It's at least a little bit more of a stabilizing force at the quarterback position. And the weapons that they have, like I said, with the receiving core, you can put that up there and measure it against some of the best in the league. They in the Lions against the run, very effective. Yep. Antonio Gibson had zero opportunity to really get into a rhythm.
2 yards per carry, right?
Exactly. Like that's excellent in my mind. And yeah, Wentz had a good run late in the game, but that was really the biggest play on the ground that they had was that Wentz run. And you know, we were worried about going into the season, what is the run defense going to look like? Preseason showed that this run defense is going to have some holes, that they don't have the body in the middle that can plug things up. Well, they sure plugged it up pretty well. Malcolm Rodriguez graded out pretty highly in this game. Quite a few of the guys did on the defensive front. So it was good to see them all working as a cohesive unit to slow down the running game, especially considering last week that was something that really kind of hurt them with the Eagles. Granted, Eagles run game much different and much more dynamic than the Commanders' run game, but still good to see them take a step in the right direction in that regard.
One thing I want to ask you, DeAndre Swift, 5 carries in that game, 7 total touches. But boy, were a couple of those electric.
Including the one where he fell on his ass and kept going.
He had some major plays with only 7 touches.
50-yard run and a 20-yard touchdown catch.
To the point where it didn't really feel like he only had 7 touches. But do you think that was more of a kind of pitch count, injury-related thing?
100%. They said going into the game he was going to have a pitch count. So 100% believe it was a pitch count thing. I think.
Are you impressed how much damage he was able to do on such a strict pitch count?
Oh, absolutely. DeAndre Swift has shown himself as one of the most dynamic, threatening players in the league as of the first 2 weeks, and I think as long as he stays healthy, that'll continue. But I do think it was a pitch count situation. I think the target touches they were looking at for DeAndre Swift this week was probably around the 10 to 12 mark. And the way that the game script was going and how effective Jamal Williams was, because Jamal Williams was pretty damn good too. I feel like they were able to say, like, all right, maybe we don't need to go double digits with Swift's touches. Maybe we can scale that back a little bit. And they did. And I for Swift to be as effective in those touches that he got, the minimal touches that he got, was awesome to see. And Jamal Williams going out there and just showing out and taking on the bulk of the touches in that running back committee was nice to see him be effective too. So major props to that offensive line, because Jamal Williams is one of those guys. Swift is not so much, but Swift is a guy that he can still be effective if his offensive line isn't performing at its best. Jamal Williams is a guy that definitely needs an offensive line performing at a high level to be fully effective, because he's a downhill runner. He's an in-between the tackles kind of guy. And even though that offensive line was depleted, I mean, you had a guy making the first start of his entire career in Dan Skipper, who was great. And you had a backup center in Evan Brown. You had backups all over the place with Logan Stenberg coming in there and playing well. I mean, they really showed up and made some holes. My favorite play of that game was the DeAndre Swift 50-yard run up the middle, where he just made that nasty cut through the hole, and you just see the guard and the.
Did you see how big that hole was too?
The guard, and it was. I want to say it was Dan Skipper and Panay Sewell setting the edge, sealing the edge there, creating the hole in between them and Brown, and then you see DeAndre Swift say, "Oh, look at this! Thank you very much. Let me take that." Makes a nasty cut and then explodes. Like it. Yeah. It honestly looked like he wasn't even hurt there, but I do think he kind of came up hobbling a little bit after the play, but. There was one play where you definitely saw it where he came up hobbled big time in that first half, but
it does really speak to both to the coaching on this team and I guess the depth as well. How
I'll tell you what, Hank Franklin's not well that next man up coach for very long.
Oh yeah, people were already on Twitter already saying to pay him forever.
that dude has preached next man up, and he not only preaches it, he also teaches it.
It's not so often you see it come to fruition this purely.
Especially not with the Lions. Like we've heard the mantra of next man up for year after year after year, and this is the first year that I can comfortably say that I really do feel like they not only preach it but believe it and put it into action, and everybody is ready to play. I mean, they brought in Dan Skipper on Saturday. They called him up Saturday for him to come into this game and play on
and
Sunday
out of position.
Start. Right, and played right guard, which he's never played in his life. Like that.
There was a reason they were chanting his name in the locker room.
Right. I also thought I read a stat or read a fun little fact that is he the tallest person to ever start at right guard?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He's like 6'10".
6'9.5". Yeah.
That is unreal.
He's huge.
That's a big dude. But no,
that's why he keeps getting put. That's why. He somehow sticks around the league on just practice squad after practice squad after practice squad.
And primarily with the Lions. I think he's been with the Lions since like 2018. TJ Lane was talking about him today.
Yeah. It is a feel-good story because I know you caught a little clip of him in Hard Knocks when Dan Campbell told me he wasn't making the team, and basically you see him like he looked wrecked and he said like he said something along the lines of like what could I have done better? And Dan Campbell was like, honestly, nothing. Like, you did everything as well as you could. It's just a personnel thing. Like, and so you really like it. It does feel good to see him go out there and actually like get a start and do very well in that start.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really cool. I'm curious to see what his role is going to be moving forward as guys start to return from injury. I mean, I know we're going to see continuous injuries from other guys, but I am curious to see what his role is going to be moving forward because, for all intents and purposes, guy in a roster spot. In my mind, he was awesome.
One other aspect I want to talk about. Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has a touchdown in 6 straight games. He has 8 catches in 8+ catches in 8 straight games, which basically ties him with Antonio Brown. I don't think ties him, but he's the only other players in NFL history who've done that are Antonio Brown and Michael Thomas. And you have Jameson Williams waiting in the ranks to come in around Thanksgiving. Do we potentially have the makings of a deadly receiving core?
In fact, I'll even comfortably say it. We already have it now before we add Jameson Williams. Like DJ Chark is a great number 2 option or number 1 outside option. You have Josh Reynolds, who's for the most part been pretty damn good.
By the way, I could have sworn DJ Chark had a catch yesterday, but I'm looking at the box score right now.
He had targets, and he also he dropped the big.
He had 4 targets. Yeah,
he dropped the big flea flicker in the end zone. But
I remember that.
For the I'll be honest with you, Amon-Ra St. Brown is an absolute monstrous steal, monstrous steal, and from what I've been hearing nationally, there's national pundits that are saying that he's entering his name into being one of the best receivers in all of football. Football. Like
at this point,
the tear that the guy has been on since the second half of last season is obviously unbelievable. I mean, it's what they say it was 8 straight games of 100 yards and a touchdown. Like that's just or 6 straight, whatever it is. That's unbelievable.
It reminds me of the tear that Adam Thielen went on in like 2018. I want to say
like there are only select few guys in throughout football history that have been able to do this. And in Lions history, it's like Calvin Johnson and Herman Moore. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's some crazy ass company to be a part of for Amon-Ra St. Brown. So to see him just continue to tear things up this year, and like coming into the season, I expected him to be good, but I knew like there was going to be some type of drop off from what we saw.
Yeah, there had to be regression. There had to be some type of regression.
Well, he's only gotten better.
Yeah.
So like this kid is unbelievable, and I'm glad he's on my team because I would not want to have to go up against him.
Yeah.
On any other team. Like you may have the makings of a guy that's putting his name up there in the lights with the Justin Jeffersons, the Adam Thielens, the Tyreek Hills of the world. Like he's putting his name on the map for sure.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see what this team looks like when we have James Williams lining up opposite him. It's gonna be fun to watch. Should we look forward to Minnesota?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Well, let's talk about the second half a little bit before we move into Minnesota, because that's where you started to see a lot of people start to say this team is so predictable, SOL, they're gonna blow it, blah blah blah. I saw a lot of that, and even I was a little bit, all right, they're only 7 back. Let's do something here. The offense definitely stalled out in the third quarter. Yeah. But one of the things I noticed, and this is kind of giving credit to what I was talking about with the pass rush, the Commanders came out of the locker room, and this is why Ron Rivera has a job, and made some really good adjustments on offense. I mean, really good adjustments. They knew Carson Wentz was not getting any time in the pocket, so let's roll him out. Let's manufacture time for Carson Wentz to throw the football and allow these this dynamic trio of wide receivers to make plays, and that's exactly what they did. But for the Lions to get the offense, out of that stalled state and start humming a little bit again, and then the defense kind of coming down and making enough plays in the second half, especially late, to lock this game down was just really good to see, because that's something that in past years I would say like the Lions can't close. Well, they closed. They made it happen. So it's awesome to see a win this early in the season, and it really did give me a lot of hope for this season. I'll be honest with you, because to see this team play the way they did, I mean, they got Des Bryant on Twitter going, "I told you this Lions team was dangerous."
Like it's very rare to completely dominate all 4 quarters of a football game. Like, you need assistance from the other team in order to do that. Like what we saw with Tennessee and Buffalo. Like, you need the other team to really suck too for you to do that. So like, I think we're just so ingrained as Lions fans to expect us to blow it that as soon as a team does start stringing a couple touchdowns together, we immediately revert to SOL, and for a good reason. I mean, they haven't given us a reason not to do that, but I am hoping that going forward, this is the new norm, where even if we do let teams back in a little bit with adjustments, we still find a way to close out the football game.
Definitely. And I gotta say, like, in the offseason, I was skeptical about whether or not this team was actually going to have a culture being instilled with this team. How do you instill a culture with a cartoon character or a WWE wrestler as your head coach? Like, who's going to buy into that? Well,
me.
I'll be honest with you. Not only am I starting to buy into it, but I really think the guys in this locker room are really starting to buy into it. And you can see the camaraderie. You can see who the leaders are in this team. You can see who's really trying to step up and make plays. So it's good to see that for sure. And it's a reason to be excited. I know this is the typical, like, they say the Monday after week 1's overreaction Monday, but I'll be honest, I think week 2 overreaction Monday is also there with the teams going.
Really hope we're not overreacting.
I do too. Really do. You know what?
It was such a good performance by them that
I think after
looking those
forward,
3 years of Patricia.
I think looking forward into week 3 up against the Vikings is going to be a referendum game on whether or not we're overreacting here, because the Vikings are not only a divisional opponent, it's on the road. The Vikings offense has shown.
Lions opened as 7-point dogs. The Lions in bed down to 6 as of this morning.
You saw the Vikings
at 7 yesterday.
You saw the Vikings at their highest in week 1 to their lowest in week 2. Like, it's going to be interesting to see, and I really do think it's a referendum game, not only for the Lions but for the rest of this division. This week 3 game between the Lions and the Vikings. So let's get into that one, Andrew. Take it away here. I'm going to let you lead this one.
Yeah, the Vikings did just play on Monday night and did not have the greatest showing. Primetime Curve showed up, as expected. against the Philadelphia Eagles. And it kind of does, it's relevant to the Lions in two ways. One, the Eagles look legit. It makes you feel a little bit better about what
that
happened
seems
last
for real,
week.
man.
I'm still sticking with no moral victories, but
The Vikings made Jalen Hurts look like he was had the arm talent of a superstar, but I still don't think that dude is a very good arm talent. Great on the ground, but the arm talent for me just isn't there. But he sure looked good the other night.
The reason it affects us twofold is because it can serve to inflate our egos as Lions fans, because the Eagles look like legit NFC contenders, and on the other hand, the Vikings look like they didn't even belong in the same field as the Philadelphia Eagles last night, which can further inflate our confidence going into a Week 3 matchup against said Minnesota Vikings. So it was an interesting game to watch. And I'll be honest with you, I don't buy in to that Vikings performance on Monday night too much. Again, they were going up against a fantastic football team, a fantastic defense.
Well, not just that. Kirk Cousins
Eagles
has never been able to perform in prime time. He's like 2-31 in primetime games.
I actively avoided any Kirk Cousins passing props. I actively avoided any actual over-unders for receiving yards for any Vikings players. I did take Justin Jefferson at like 50 plus, but and I still didn't even hit that parlay. It was such a conservative parlay. I still didn't even hit it. Anyway, but don't expect that Vikings team to be the team you play in Week 3, because it's not going to be.
No.
That's going to be the worst you're going to see the Vikings all season.
Yes.
Unless they have another primetime game, I'm not sure. But
why do they keep giving them primetime games when you get absolute stinkers out of them like that?
Because they have two very marketable guys in Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson.
I mean, I get that, but still.
Now, what worries me about going into Week 3 is the guy I just named specifically, Justin Jefferson. You saw what A.J. Brown did to us in Week 1. We do not... No, we have a... I don't want to say we do, but we kind of... I'm starting to trust our secondary enough to...
I'm not.
Contain middle-of-the-road receivers. We do not have anyone that's going to keep up with someone like A.J. Brown or
I think
Jefferson.
The secondary's performance and ability to contain receivers is entirely reliant on the pass rush. If you notice in Week 1, they couldn't contain shit. Well, the pass rush couldn't get to Hurts at all. And that was a mixture of, well, we didn't get enough penetration, and two, Hurts was able to move around a lot more. Kirk Cousins can't move like Hurts, but I do think the offensive line is going to be able to protect a little bit better than the Commanders' offensive line was. So, it worries me, because if the Lions' if the Lions' pass rush is not able to get to Cousins the way they did Carson Wentz, I am seriously worried about the secondary's ability to keep Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen both for going over 150 yards. Like, it's something that yes, they performed nicely to this point, but it still has me worried, because I haven't quite seen enough yet. Like, A.J. Brown put up 144 yards. That's a lot. Was it 144? I think it was.
It was well into the triple.
Yes. Yeah, they kept guys like Samuel and McLaurin and Dotson down a little bit. But if you notice in the second half, that's where they got all of their yardage. What was the difference in the second half between the first? Well, Carson Wentz had time to throw the football. And when he had time to throw the football, our secondary wasn't able to keep these guys under wraps as much. So that's where I'm saying, like, that's what has me worried, is if Kirk Cousins is going to have time to throw the football, I don't think our secondary has much of a chance in that regard. Like, I guess I shouldn't say much of a chance, but I do worry about it a lot, because you look at the numbers from the receiver trio from the Commanders. Curtis Samuel, 7 for 78 and a touchdown. McLaurin, 4 for 75. Dotson, 4 for 59 and a touchdown. Those aren't bad numbers at all. And like 95% of those came in the second half. And yeah, I get it. They threw the ball a ton in the second half. But Carson Wentz had time to throw the football.
Exactly.
So I think for this secondary group to be effective, it's entirely reliant on our pass rush. So we got to dial it up again.
And I think on the other side of the ball too, you saw what the Philadelphia Eagles were able to do in their passing game with the time that their offensive line was able to buy, because Minnesota's secondary isn't that great. So if they can buy time to let those receivers run, let the quarterback go through his read, you can pick apart that Minnesota secondary. And it's the same is going to go for Jared Goff. I mean, the Eagles had a combined 300-plus receiving yards yesterday amongst all pass catchers. So I do think a key to this game is going to be, can we get this O-line healthy, even though it's going to be a better pass rush than what you face, like you said, than what you faced against the Commanders in week 2. So can you get this O-line healthy and buy Goff enough time to actually expose the secondary? Because I think that's the way you beat the the Vikings.
Absolutely. It's make Kirk Cousins uncomfortable. Because Kirk Cousins is obviously no stranger to throwing picks. I believe he's already got 3 this year. Make him make mistakes. Make him uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Get in his face. He will throw picks and you will create turnovers. Make that happen. I really do believe it's going to entirely rely on the pass rush and also the ability to stop Dalvin Cook. That's a big
Miles
ask.
Sanders did give us some trouble in week 1, so Jalen Hurts, but we did do a solid job against Antonio Gibson, but that's because they kind of went away from the run.
Also an entirely different animal.
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook is by far the best running back they will have faced so far and is going to be one of the best 3 backs you will have faced all season.
Yeah.
So he might even be the best back you face all season. So it's going to be a tough game. That's the problem with the Vikings offense is they're very dynamic. They're able to beat you through the air and on the ground. So they got to contain Dalvin Cook and they got to get to the quarterback.
But at the where it stands right now, plus 6, are you comfortable to take the Lions plus 6 points?
I am. I'll be honest with you. And especially that plus 7 line, I think, was quite a bit disrespectful, honestly.
Yeah, right?
Especially after the way the Vikings performed last night compared to how the Lions looked against the Eagles. Like, I straight up think that's just disrespectful. But even plus 6, I'd still say the Lions, I would take that. They may not win this game, but I do think they'll do enough to keep it close.
And even if the Vikings had played well last night, I have my own little thing about NFC North matchups. I will take big spreads. I will take the points in any big spread. I mean, we didn't really come to fruition with Green Bay and Chicago, but Chicago is an absolute dog shit team right now. But like anytime we've seen an NFC North clash, it's usually either low scoring or close or both. So I like even if the Vikings have looked good, I'm still going to take the 6-7 points that you give me.
Absolutely. Like this game could go really badly. There's no doubt about it. Like if the Lions don't have their A game and can't get to the quarterback, like the Vikings are just gonna put up 1,000 points. But I think the Lions are a good enough team to keep this at the very least close. And after what I've seen the first 2 weeks, I think they've done enough for me to at least believe that. So I think they'll keep this one close, if not win it outright. It's tough to play in Minnesota, especially in Lions history, but we've had better luck in the last decade than we had the previous 70. So I'll take the Lions with the points here.
By the way, real quick, speaking of that Minnesota Philly game, did you see how Darius how well he contained Justin Jefferson?
Yes, and
absolutely shut
Matt
him
Patricia
down.
should never be allowed back in this town.
People were on Twitter going, Matt Patricia should have been fired the moment he approached the general manager about trading Darius.
Well, the one problem with that is the GM was Bob Quinn.
Yep.
Yeah.
They were buddy.
Yeah. My favorite thing that I saw was before week 1, I saw Matt Patricia was calling plays for the Pats in week 1, and they put up like a total of 7 points, and I just thought that was absolutely hilarious.
Oh my god!
Why does he keep getting a job? I don't get it.
There was a small debate on Lions Twitter about would Hard Knocks have been better if we had it when Matt Patricia was coach.
No, I actually think it would have been god awful.
There would have been, people were saying there would have been so much drama going on Hard Knocks.
See, I don't think so. I think it would have been just players being shutting down. Like I don't think there was like you wouldn't have the fun camaraderie. You wouldn't have the Aiden Hutchinson doing a dance in front of the lecture hall. You wouldn't have Dan Campbell looking like a WWE wrestler out there with the way he does his speeches. Like there would have been no personality. Because one thing about Matt Patricia that I think is one of the most under-thought about things with him is the dude had straight up zero personality.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And he was boring and
that is the upside of at least what this season of Hard Knocks gave us. We didn't get the storylines we wanted.
But we got personalities.
We got some electric personalities.
Right. And I don't think you would get any of that with a Matt Patricia coach team because he sucked the personality and fun out of every room he walked into. So, no, I don't think it would have been better. I think you would have seen a lot of players shut down and have no fun.
Yeah, I'm on your side. All right, should we shift over to Pistons?
Let's shift it over to some Pistons talk here.
All right. So, James Edwards III, our favorite beat writer on the show, because we
do reference him a lot. In all fairness, big respect to James Edwards. Guy does a wonderful job.
Did you know only
he actually is my favorite beat writer, by the way.
Only journalist to ever make league fits.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
He made league fits last year. Anyway, so he put an article covering Pistons training camp. One question for the Pistons 2020 NBA draft picks. That means Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Saban Lee. I kind of want to pose this to you, Nicholas, and I want to see
part of that group.
Yeah, he was our second round.
Oh yeah, he was second round pick.
I want to see your answers to these questions. So his question for Killian Hayes: where does the scoring?
Killian this question.
Not actually, but like if he had one question for Killian Hayes,
right? Okay, all right.
Well, yeah.
Just trying to put my mindset in there.
Like not like posing directly. Like this is the question mark on Killian Hayes going into the season, kind of thing. Like, yeah. Where does the scoring come from?
In all honesty, for Killian Hayes, it's going to have to come from dribble penetration, just because the shot's just not there yet. If he's able to develop the shot, it'll come from ball movement on the offensive side. Because you put Killian alongside Cade, there's going to be ample ball movement, which means Killian's going to get open shots because the attention's not going to be on him. So it's going to come from either dribble penetration on his part, which I don't think he really is too inclined to do that. So the scoring is going to have to come from making open shots.
Yeah, he's got the handles for it. He just doesn't like to attack the way he needs to.
He doesn't have the tenacity.
That leads into where James Edwards thinks it should come from, which is free throw line. He pointed out that Hayes averaged 1.0 free throw attempts per game over his first two seasons, which has got to change. But like going right in line with what you're saying, that's going to involve him attacking more. That's going to involve dribble penetration. So that's going to come with what you're saying is where you're saying the scoring should come from. So I think we're both on agreement. We've both been harping on Killian Hayes since he got in the league. We just need to see him attack more. If he's going to the basket,
where I think it is most likely going to come from, and it's entirely contingent on him being able to hit the shots, is the fact that he's going to get open shot opportunities on this team. You have so many other threats out there between Jaden Ivey or Sadiq Bey or Cade, insert name here, Marvin Bagley, whatever. There's going to be a lot of opportunities where the defensive attention's not going to be on him, so he's going to get the ball with an open look. And if he's willing to take it and he makes it, that's where a bulk of his scoring is going to come from, at least early on until he starts making them on a really consistent basis.
Yeah, that's the... That's like the bare minimum. Like, can you at least make the open threes that the defense is going to give you because of your 3-point shooting percentage?
Right.
He does have a spot as of last year. The corner three, he did hit, specifically the corner three.
It's
he
weird
did
to put a point guard in the corner, though. That is an uncomfortable spot for an offense to run through.
Isaiah Stewart, is that three ball for real?
God, I hope so.
In the tail end of last season, we saw it in Summer League. So.
God, I hope so. I'm not quite ready to say that he's going to start hitting this thing at 100%, not 100%, but a 30% clip. But I think it's going to be enough to where it might make some defenders think about it. Yeah. Might. And if he makes, and really honestly, it might just take some nights for him to make one, for the defense to start thinking about it.
Yeah, we just need him. We just need him to hit it at a clip. that draws a defensive 3-point line and spaces the floor. That's all
Right.
we need.
Which, again, like I said, on some nights, if he hits one, defense may start paying attention that night. Next night, doesn't hit it, they'll probably ignore it. I think it's going to be a case-by-case, game-by-game thing for him.
So a stat that we've referenced on the show already multiple times, and that Edwards is referenced in this article too, is the 56% clip with which Isaiah Stewart hit his threes over the final stretch of the season, which encompasses 18 attempts.
So taking
Obviously,
less than one a game.
Well, it was over like 7 or 8 games.
Oh, okay. So okay. All right.
So obviously with that kind of number, when you see 58%, it's hard not to get a little bit titillated. But
it's exciting.
Because what it tells you is, okay, there is a 3 ball there. How consistent can he be with it is the question, like you said. It's all about consistency. And I was encouraged when, even though it is Summer League, to see that ball was still falling in Summer League. But now that I think, give it a few games as we get into the season, and I think you're going to start seeing defenses respect him, then we're going to see that 3 balls really for real.
You know what? You know me. I'm a big believer a huge believer in this league. If Brook Lopez can develop a legitimate 3-point shot, anybody can develop a legitimate 3-point shot. So
hey, Andre tried to do it.
All right, maybe not at anyone. Most guys, how's that? But I definitely believe Stewart's got it in him to make this thing be consistent. Might not happen this year, but I think he's going to trend in the right direction at the very least.
Yeah, I think we know at the very least that he can probably hit open threes at least like a low 30s clip.
Hopefully.
I'm just curious to see, once he starts getting the respect of the defense, is that 3 ball still going to fall?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair, because that 56% that he was shooting in the last stretch of games last year is probably a little bit of fool's gold, a lot of fool's gold. It's an insane clip.
No one shoots with these.
Right. But like that clip right there probably tells you that the defense wasn't respecting it. So they gave him the room to take those. Exactly. So
a lot of those were wide open threes.
Right. So as soon as there starts to be a little bit of a hand in his face, does that 3 ball still fall? And that's going to be something that I think Isaiah Stewart's going to have to prove to us this season to show that, all right, this thing's here to stay.
I'm going to change up how this question is posed. So the way James Edwards posed the question on Saddiq Bey is, can you find the perfect balance in year 1 and year 2? The year 1, year 2 versions of himself, because
they were
2 very
vastly different players.
What I want to ask you is, what does that balance look like?
Ooh, that's a good question. I do think he can find the balance. What it looks like, I think, is quite literally just that. It's a balance of knowing, because I think Saddiq Bey is one of the smartest players on the floor for the Pistons, and I think he's one of those guys that knows how to pick his spots really well. So it's going to be a semblance of, if he is picking his spots the right way, you're going to see nights where Saddiq Bey is going to beat you every time off the bounce because his man can't stop him. Whether it be physically or athletically speaking, his man can't contain him, and they're going to have to bring help side over to just stop him from getting to the rim. Or some nights it's going to be, all right, this guy's able to contain me, able to stay in front, I'll beat you with the shot. Like it's going to be... If Saddiq Bey, it's going to come down to Saddiq Bey's decision making. So I think it's going to look like a mixture of a different look of Saddiq Bey on a night in, night out, depending on his defender, how the offense is flowing. Is Cade in the game? Is he not in the game? It may even be different based on who's on the floor in terms of what Saddiq Bey has to do. But Saddiq is one of those players that I think can handle that type of workload, that can handle that type of pressure put on him, because he is mature. He's a grown-ass man out there. And he's also an extremely intelligent basketball player. So I just feel like, say Cade's not on the floor, maybe they look for Saddiq to be a little more aggressive with the ball in his hands. Cade is on the floor. Maybe Saddiq sits back in the corner and waits for his shot. Like, I think that's the type of Saddiq Bey you're going to get this year. And in my opinion, it's the best version of Saddiq Bey.
Yeah, I think you're pretty much spot on with this, because the way I think about it is, okay, Cunningham and Jay and Ivy there. So what we saw with year 2 Saddiq Bey is, again, a lot of trying to be more the ball handler, trying to take the ball inside, trying to do something with the ball in his hands rather than just be a catch and shoot guy, and which is fantastic. But obviously, we don't need that as badly now with a guy like Jaden Ivey on the roster because that's going to be Jaden Ivey's role as well as Cade's role. So what I want to see is, like you said, Sadiq's catch and shoot percentage, not so much actual shooting percentage, but actually catch and shoot attempts to go back up. They dipped about 15-20% last season.
I'd like to see it move back to like a 5 to 10% dip from year one.
Yeah, and I think with an increased focus on his catch and shoot game, the actual efficiency of it is going to go back up. But he had a whole season of work on ball handling, taking
put up 50 points being that tenacious dribble drive guy. Like it,
trying to
there's something there.
Trying to create with the ball in your hand. Use that in the catch and shoot game. You murder anyone who tries to play on a pump fake. You have the ability to do it. You take someone on the pump fake, take them to the paint. You had a whole season where you were working on basically just catch and shoot. You had a whole season where you were super focused on driving the ball and shooting off the dribble.
I really think it's going to come down to who is on the floor with him at that point in time. Because, like you mentioned, if Caden and Jaden are on the floor, he doesn't need to be that dribble drive guy. He can sit out on the wing and wait for his shot or go off ball and
that's why he's
move
primarily
around
going to be
screens
the
to get
catch
his
and shoot
shots.
guy. But use that dribble drive game when the opportunity arises.
I'll tell you what, right now, there's going to be a game and a moment in that game where you're going to have Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey all on the floor, and Sadiq's going to get the ball out on the wing, and he's going to call an ISO, and he's just going to absolutely destroy his man. And that right there might go down as one of my favorite parts of the season, because that's the type of thing that, like, Sadiq has it in him to do that.
Oh, yeah.
And that level of, like, that's just basketball IQ to go along with, what your talent can give and what you can bring to the floor. And I can't wait to see it because I know it's coming. Yeah.
Final question. Final guy. Saban Lee. Again, I'm going to kind of rephrase the question here. James Edwards asks, how can he stand out? My question is, how can he stick on this roster?
I was going to say, how can he stay on the roster? He's going to look real good in that G League uniform. No.
What does he need to do to get a new contract?
Oh, God. It's going to be really, really, really tough because there is
especially with Jaden Ivey in.
There's a log jam in the backcourt right now.
Yeah.
And it's, you know what, here's what it's going to be. It's going to have to be this dude's going to have to start hitting shots at a really high clip. He's going to have to be a threatening shooter off the bench to maintain a job with this team. He's going to have to turn into a smaller Reggie Bullock or a Langston Galloway type that can produce and score off the bench for this team. Because right now with the guard position off the bench, they don't necessarily have that. Isaiah Livers can score a little bit on the wing. Marvin Bagley can score a little bit down low. They don't really have a guard that can produce scoring off the bench at an effective rate. So if Saban Lee can do that, can score better than Killian Hayes, that may be where he kind of solidifies his spot on the roster, is if he can provide a scoring spark plug off the bench.
Yeah, which is not a high bar to clear.
It's really not.
Killian
I'm asking him to be Langston Galloway.
Killian Hayes definitely not a shooter. Jaden Ivey
or Wayne Ellington,
not really a shooter. He can hit shots, but that's not his main game. Cade is a shooter when you need him to be. Saban Lee averaged 35% from threes rookie season. That number dipped to 23% last year.
Woof.
That's not going to keep you on the roster.
No, God, no. He needs to bring that number north of 36 in my mind to stay on the roster.
100%. You need to be that reliable 3-point shooting guard that I think you and I believe this roster needs. The other thing I want to see from him was every time that I saw Saban Lee in the game last season, things just felt chaotic. Like,
oh my God, that dude is just a tornado in like a bad way.
Like there are good aspects to said tornado, like that speed and athleticism I love.
But it's out of control.
Exactly.
He's the Tasmanian devil out there.
Control the game more.
He's the Tasmanian devil out there. Zero control, but extreme speed and athleticism.
Yeah. We just need to see him control the game out there. And that's actually being able to hit threes at a high percent it opened like we said with Killian. It's going to open up the game so much more for you. And
well, especially for somebody like him, because if you're taking threes, you're not out of control at that point. Like if you're taking open threes, I should say, you're not out of control. You're playing at a measured game speed and at a measured game pace, and you're able to just kind of keep the game in front of you at that point. So if you're taking open threes and open shots, you're doing what you need to do. First off, if you're getting them, it tells me that you're doing what you need to do on the floor to create offense. You just got to hit them.
Yeah. But I'll be honest, I don't really see
I don't either.
Saban leading on this roster past this year because his main calling card on this roster was that speed and athleticism, and Jay and I basically covers off on that now.
I like I said, it's a tall task because there's such a log jam in front of him, and now there's a guy who's better than him at what he does that was taken in with a high investment in a number 5 overall pick that they're not going to be willing to give up on anytime soon. So frankly, I don't really see much room for a guy like Saban Lee on this roster when you still have the presence of Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, not to mention the other names on this roster that they're going to want to continue to build with, and Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Livers. Yeah, they don't play the same role or position, but it's a roster spot. And as you go down the list of the rosters, there's, that number of what's available is getting smaller and smaller for a guy like Saban Lee.
Yeah.
Especially when you start adding guys like Jalen Duren and other guys that may not be on this roster this year, but will most likely be on the roster next year.
Yep, 100%.
All right.
Yeah, those are the 4 questions for your 2020 draft picks. I do want to close it out by asking a question that we kind of touched on last week, and that is, which of these 2020 draft picks are part of the Pistons core moving forward?
Pistons core, or just a part of the team?
Like, once the Pistons are competing for a championship, who's on this roster from the 2020 draft class?
Well, obviously it's going to be Cade, Jaden Ivey, and Sadiq. I think.
Well, I'm saying the 2020 draft class. I said. I'm talking the guys
sorry,
we just
not
covered.
Cade then.
Yeah.
So it's going to be Sadiq Bey for sure.
I think Sadiq's an integral piece unless you trade him. But
right, I still believe.
I don't think it's a guy they're letting walk at all.
If they're going to invest in Isaiah Stewart's 3-point shot and have him develop into something, I think he's on it. If he can't develop that 3-point shot, he's good as dead. Like he's gone.
I agree.
Especially with Jalen Duren waiting in the wings. I think it's unpopular, and a lot of people probably don't believe this, but I think Killian Hayes is a guy who has the inside track of being on this roster when this team is competing. And the reason I say that is because he does provide something of high value, which is a defensive force off the bench, which Pistons teams that have won championships in the past have utilized that to an extreme degree. So, i.e. Lindsey Hunter. Granted, Lindsey could hit a 3, but
that's what I'm saying. Like, I think Killian Hayes can for sure be a long-term piece in the squad. If
he's got, in my mind, he's got the inside track.
Yeah, if he can just find a way to score points.
I think the lone
if it's attacking
name
and drawing fouls. I don't care if it's attacking and making shots. I don't care if it's hitting threes at a somewhat respectable clip. I don't care if it's hitting mid-range jumpers at a somewhat respectable clip. Just find a way to put the ball in the basket, please.
I think the lone name that's on the outside looking in is Saban Lee. I think Killian Hayes is very close to it, though. And I think Isaiah Stewart is... There's a door open for his way out, but he's got to go out of his way not to... Like, he's got to go out of his way to enter it, basically.
Yeah, like the way I view it is Isaiah Stewart and Killian Hayes both have things they need to do to stick.
Yes.
And I think Sadiq's the one guy where you can be like,
that dude.
Right now, I can see him being part of this championship piece, obviously unless he gets traded. But like,
not only a part of it, but I think he's a huge
an integral part.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with that.
So, all right. Anything else to add before we close out?
No, that's it.
All right, that is going to call it for this week, guys. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. We thank Detroit Sports Podcast at Detroit Podcast on Twitter for producing, as always. We will catch you guys next week. This has been the Fan Reporters. Bye, fans.
For fans.
Have a good one, guys. Have a good weekend, and let's go Lions. Let's beat those Vikings this weekend. Peace out.
Peace.